Henry Diltz, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
First thing I must ask you is, where did your love of music come from? Where did that spark begin?
Well, I think for sure my mother and father. I mean, I remember I was born in 38. I remember in the early 40s in Great Neck, Long Island, New York, hearing Hank Williams on the radio, you know, Your Hit Parade, stuff like that. I know my father played the cello, but he was an airline pilot. And my mother was a nurse, but she played the piano. So all my life, you know, I mean, I remember seeing Walt Disney movies, Pinocchio. I've got no strings to hold me down, you know. All of that stuff is all kind of in my head. And then all through high school and college, I sang in glee clubs and chorales and, you know, choirs, church choirs, sang the Messiah a bunch of times and all of that stuff.
What was your first instrument?
The harmonica. My dad was in the State Department, and so when I was a little child, I moved to Tokyo, Japan in '47, right after the war. And picked up a little harmonica, and on Boy Scout camping trips, I would play Red River Valley, those cowboy songs on the harmonica. And then guitar a little bit, and the clarinet, and then five-string banjo was my main instrument.
Yeah. How did you get into banjo?
I listened to a lot of Pete Seeger records, and his sister Peggy Seeger, who plays like a beautiful music box, mountain modal tunings. You know, and that fifth string is just very compelling. It's like a bagpipe, you know, and that drone note is constantly in there. And that just was mesmerizing to me. And when I finally got a banjo and I was at college at the University of Hawaii, I would drive home in the afternoon on my motor scooter and sit there for a couple of hours just playing, you know, the Pete Seeger bump diddy, just that fifth string. It was hypnotizing.
Yeah. Modern Folk Quartet, How did that band come about?
That came about also in Hawaii. I went to Hawaii to study psychology at college and ended up singing in a coffee house. It was at the time of well, they called us beatniks, but it was the end of the beatnik era and the beginning of the hippie era, and it was when all kids were playing guitars and banjos in coffee houses, you know. You only needed a song or two, you could sit there and play. And I went down there with my banjo and met the proprietor, Cyrus Faryar, who then, and the two of us were in the Modern Folk Quartet along with a couple of other people. And you know, we played in various twos and threes and groups, and in the end of it all, we came up with this quartet, singing 4-part harmony. A lot of folk groups were 3-part, Peter, Paul, and Mary, you know, Crosby, Stills, Nash. That, you know, the melody, the high and the low. But 4-part is a little more sophisticated. It's more like jazz too. You know, you've got a seventh and a ninth, you know, in there, the zinger chords, and I just loved singing that. I mean, it was, you know, an extension of singing in a choir. In fact, it's just like singing in a choir, but instead of 10 people singing the same part, there's only one of you singing that part, but there's 4 of you. And I just love harmony singing.
Yeah. You did some recordings with the Modern Folk Quartet.
Yes.
I believe you recorded with Phil Spector.
Yes, we did. First we made 2 folk albums. We were like the 4 freshmen doing folk music, and we wore suits. And in those days, folk music and comedy, or folk music and jazz, were big things. And so we came over in early '63. By '64, we were singing at the Village Gate in New York, and we were opening up for jazz musicians and comedians, Woody Allen, Bill Cosby, Roland Kirk, the jazz guy. And so we made 2 albums for Warner Brothers. Then we did some singles for Dunhill Records. And then Phil Spector was looking for a folk rock group. Because by this time, the Beatles had played Ed Sullivan, all the folk groups had gone electric and gotten a drummer, including us. And so then it was folk rock. And then you had the Byrds and the Buffalo Springfield, and our group as well was doing that same thing. And he got a hold of us and, you know, wanted to do a folk rock single. We spent the whole summer going to his house several days a week. We'd get there at, say, like, 2 o'clock, and by 3 or 3:30 he would come downstairs, and then we'd sit around the piano. He would play chords, sing this, and then we would jam and play. And at night we'd play a big club on Sunset Strip, and he would come down and get up on stage with us with his 12-string, and he would play Rose in Spanish Harlem. That was his song, and we'd back him up, oohs and ahs, you know. And finally, he found a song for us, a Harry Nilsson song, This Could Be the Night. And we recorded that with the wall of sound, and Brian Wilson came down. He was our god to us, the Beach Boys. I mean, we just loved to be, to every gig, you know, going, we'd warm up in the van, going, oh, round, round, get around, I get around, and that was our warm-up song. There he was in the control room, listening to our single over and over and over in his robe and slippers. Big guy at that point. We never even talked to him. We couldn't, you know. And we thought, oh, yes, you know, this is going to be great. And the whole summer we kept waiting for that darn record to come out, and it never came out, never came out. Finally, a year or two later, it came out on some kind of an English album called Rare Masters. And there were some Ronette songs on there that I played banjo on as well in the Wall of Sound that I thought were sheer hits. But he was so squirrely that if he wasn't sure it was going to go right to number one, he wouldn't put it out. And so when it came out, it became the theme song for Rodney Bingenheimer's radio show every Sunday night. It was us singing This Could Be the Night.
Then, while you were playing in the Modern Folk Quartet, you made a purchase which changed your life.
Yes, indeed.
If you could indulge us with that story.
Yes.
I know you've told it a million times.
Yes, we just played the University of Michigan when we were in East Lansing, whatever university that was, you know, Michigan U or U of Michigan, whatever it was. So the next day we were in a motorhome, and on the way out of town we saw a secondhand store and just, you know, pulled up to the curb, ran in there to spend a little money for stuff we didn't need. There was a table of secondhand cameras, and one of the guys in the group said, oh, a camera. And I said, yeah, what the heck, I'll get one. They were secondhand, like $20. And I said, well, you know, and then the one guy said, let's pull into the next drugstore and I'll buy film for us. So we all bought one. And he said, here's your box, here's your box. I said, well, how do you set these numbers? He said, well, look on the box, Kodak box, sunlight, 250 at 8. I said, oh, okay, here's 250. You know, go out in the sunlight. And that's how I learned, just spending the next 2 or 3 weeks photographing my pals, my bandmates, and cows in the fields we would pass, or junkyards, whatever we would see. We were all clicking away like mad. Got back to LA, developed the film, and lo and behold, they were slides, transparencies. I had no idea what they were going to be. I never even thought about it. I said, well, let's get a slide projector then. We got all our hippie friends together in a room, and when that first slide hit the wall, I went, oh, this is amazing. We're there, we're back there. It's so real, it's living. And I said, I'm going to take more of these so we can have more slideshows. And it became a kind of a regular thing. Every few weeks, every month, we'd have a slideshow. And I would spend the intervening time photographing all my friends on the sly so that I could surprise them in the slideshow. I wanted that picture hit the wall and they say, oh, I didn't even know you took that. That was what I was after. And pretty soon that translated into a lot of my friends were musicians, you know, David Crosby, Stephen Stills, Mama Cass. I lived in Laurel Canyon, played at the Troubadour, and knew all those people, met them on the road and recording studios. And so I started photographing them, just, you know, not jobs, not assignments, you know, just because I photographed wherever I was. And then they began saying, well, we could use that for a publicity or then eventually an album cover. So a lot of the album covers I did were pretty accidental. Yeah,
and your first foray into commercial photography was the Love and Spoonful shoot in front of the wall?
You might say that. It's funny. As I remember it, it was the Buffalo Springfield. One day in Laurel Canyon, I heard guitar music coming out of a house. I walked up, it was Stephen Stills in there at a friend's house. He said, Henry, this afternoon we're going down to a club in Redondo Beach for a sound check. You want to come along? And I said, yes, I do, because I wanted to go on the beach and photograph people for my slideshow. I left them alone in the club. I didn't photograph them in the club. When I got back to the club, they were walking out the back door. And there was a big mural on the back. And I said, oh, would you guys stand in front of that mural so I can just show how big it is. And I took a few shots, and a magazine said, oh, we'd like to use one of those. Then right around just before or just after that, my friend Eric Jacobson, who was producing The Love and Spoonful, said, Henry, you want to learn to be a photographer? Come to New York this summer. The guys need a lot of photos. We just had a big hit, you know, with Do You Believe in Magic? I spent the whole summer touring around with them, and my first album cover was Hums of The Love and Spoonful. But it's up for grabs. In my mind, the Buffalo Springfield came first. My archivist claims that by looking at the dates, he can tell that the Love and Spoonful came first, but I don't know.
So, how important do you think the fact is that you are a musician?
Oh, yeah.
How did that help with your photography career?
Yeah, it helped a lot because just having the right temperament, you know, mainly being a musician and not a photographer, I mean, I didn't sort of wade in there like, okay, I'm here to take the picture, you know. No, I would just go in and I would just listen and watch and then kind of take the picture when nobody was looking. I wanted to see what was happening. I wanted to photograph the real thing, not sort of set it up. Because I didn't go to photo school. I didn't have lights. I didn't want to pose anybody. I wanted to document what was going on. That was the interesting thing to me. And so being a musician, you know, musicians know how to hang out, right? Because they hang out, you know, for hours in airports, on buses, and, you know, recording studios. Before the gig, you know, after the sound check, you got a couple hours to hang out. I knew how to hang out. I've seen my fellow photographers show up at a video shoot to take a picture for Billboard magazine, and they say, okay, I'm here. Let's, you know, stand over here by the camera. Let me get the shot. Okay, thanks, goodbye. They're gone. If I go to a video thing, I'm there for 8 hours, 10 hours, you know. I don't want to just take the picture and leave. I want to see what happens. I want to take pictures of all of it and hang out. That's, I think, what I brought to the table, hanging out.
Let's talk about some of your friends from the past. Jim Morrison, what sort of a guy was he?
He was an observer. He was a poet. I use the word bemused, which kind of means kind of quietly self-amused, you know. He'd kind of nod his head and smile a little bit, very kind of dry, he's not animated. He didn't come running up jabbering or anything like that. He was very cool, very cool. That was Jim. Yeah. Except when he, of course, drank to excess or took too many drugs, then it all came out, you know.
Could you recount the story of the Morrison Hotel cover for us again?
Sure, yes. I was working with a graphic artist, Gary Burden, and we had just done Crosby, Stills, Nash, sitting on the couch, and that had come out. And the Doors liked that cover and called us up, said, would you do our next cover? So we went to have a meeting with them, and we said, well, do you have a title? No. Do you have an idea? What do you want on your cover? No ideas. And then Ray Manzarek, the keyboard player, just said, he just spoke up, he said, well, you know, my wife Dorothy and I were driving through downtown LA the other day, and we saw this old funky hotel. It said Morrison Hotel. And we said, wow, well, that sounds great. And we went right down and looked at it. There it was. It looked fantastic, you know. It was a transient hotel, you know, kind of a flop house. And we brought the group back a few days later, and we kind of walked in. There was nobody in the lobby, and we walked in, and I stopped at the desk. There was only one guy at a desk, and I said, we're just going to be over there taking some photos. We're not going to bother anybody. There wasn't anybody. He said, no, you can't take any pictures. I said, why not? Well, the owner, you've got to, you know, talk to the, apparently he was a famous slumlord, and everybody was scared to death, you know, that they'd do the wrong thing. And so I said, okay, you guys, you know, we got to go outside. And I figured they could stand in front of that window with the writing over their heads, and they couldn't stop us. We're on the sidewalk. And as soon as we got out there, I looked through the window and I saw a light go on in the lobby, and it was the elevator light, and the guy had left the desk and got on the elevator. So I actually said, run in there quick. And they jumped right behind the window. And You know, we hadn't planned this. I didn't even know how we were going to do it, but it all kind of dictated itself very quickly. They just got behind the window, hit their marks without anybody saying anything. I started clicking, and Gary said the thing he always says, move back, get the whole thing, you know, get the whole window. And I moved back, took one roll of film, and we got out of there. And then Jim said, let's go get a drink, because it was afternoon. We drove a few blocks to Skid Row, where it was all bars and pawn shops. We didn't know where to stop until somebody looked out the windshield and said, look, on the next corner, Hard Rock Cafe. So we stopped in there, had some beers, and we put that on the back of the album. And when that album came out, they got a call from England, and a voice said, would you mind if we use that name? We're starting a cafe. We want to call it the Hard Rock Cafe. They said, sure, fine, go ahead. So that was the beginning of the Hard Rock Cafe empire and Morrison Hotel. Nowadays, I started a gallery 15 years ago with only my pictures in it, a couple partners, and we had that Morrison Hotel picture in the window, but we had no name on our window. We didn't have a name, really. And I was told my partner, look how nice that looks, and look at our window, we got nothing. He said, yeah, we'll have that painted on there. So that's the name of our Morrison Hotel Gallery empire. Now we have one in New York, LA, and Maui.
You mentioned the Crosby, Stills, Nash cover. What happened with that? You wouldn't make that stuff up.
No, you know, those guys were all really good friends. I mean, I knew Graham and the Hollies. I knew Stephen way before the Buffalo Springfield, and I knew David way before the Byrds. So we were pals, fellow musicians, and they were recording their new album, which famously Mama Cass introduced Graham to the other two, knowing they needed a third voice. And they needed some kind of picture. They didn't have any pictures. So my partner Gary and I got in a car with them, and we drove around West Hollywood. And Graham had known about, he said, I've seen this little wooden house that would be cool. And we stopped in 2 or 3 places, and then we finally found the little house, and they jumped on the couch. And we took the pictures. They hadn't named themselves yet. And by the time we got the film developed, and we're looking at the slideshow, they had named themselves Crosby, Stills, Nash, just in that small interval of a couple of days. And we said, that would make a great cover, but they're backwards. It's Nash, Stills, and Crosby. So I said, well, let's just drive back. It'll take 5 minutes. You jump on there in the right order. We know what it looks like. We went back, and the house was gone. So they had to use that picture with them backwards.
Another guy that you got to meet was Jimi Hendrix.
Jimi Hendrix. As a lot of guitar heroes are, he was very quiet. He was like a, I've read other people say that too, you know, he was just like a little boy. I mean, he was very kind of, you know, simple and elemental and nothing, you know, nothing complicated. He was just there, you know, in the moment. And I did hang out with him a few times, and then I found him to be, you know, so easygoing and easy to talk to, you know, no big deal, no big ideas, no big emotions. I mean, just there, you know, living. Loved it.
Joni Mitchell, it strikes me that she was very much respected amongst her peers.
Of course, very much respected, yeah. I mean, she was, you know, gosh. I mean, in those days of the beginning of singer-songwriters, before that there were the songwriters and the singers. Frank Sinatra never wrote any songs. Elvis Presley never wrote any songs. They sang the songs the songwriters wrote. Well, after the Beatles played Ed Sullivan and Bob Dylan started imitating Woody Guthrie with the talking blues, the idea was kind of in the air. You know, you could write your own song and sing it with your own ideas in it. And that's what kind of started, you know. And then there was, you know, Joni Mitchell, Stephen Stills, you know, Paul Simon, James Taylor, all those great singer-songwriters all kind of started in the late 60s into the early 70s. And that was a sea change, really, in the music business. And it was a renaissance time, a flowering time. I mean, wow, because we haven't seen it since, really. I mean, it's gone on and kind of proliferated and gotten wider and bigger, and now, nobody thinks that, everybody writes their own song. But that had not been done really that much at all. And so Joni Mitchell, she was a poet, first of all, and a painter, very, full of the arts, really, and full of, a feeling for life, and very observant. And I always wanted to go with Joni Mitchell, so she'd write a song about me, because she wrote songs about all the guys she went with. And this was the early 60s, free love. I mean, everybody loved everybody, and what a great time. And Laurel Canyon seemed to be the center of all of that. And she lived in Laurel Canyon on Lookout Mountain Avenue. I lived a little further up the hill on Lookout Mountain Avenue. And she was amazing. I mean, I don't have the words to describe her, but we all know. But so were many songwriters. I mean, Jackson Browne, when I hear one of his songs, it just stops me right in my tracks, James Taylor, gosh. Jimmy Webb, one of my favorite songwriters. And of course, Paul McCartney, the Beatles, the Mozart of our times, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I was saying, music is a huge part of just being a human being, of being alive, of our lives. I said, what do you think, 30%? And my friend said, 70%, And then later, in another conversation, said, really, music is 100% of my life. I mean, everything I do has music. No matter what I'm doing, music is in my life. So how do you pick a percentage? I mean, it's on our memories, our thoughts. I mean, you hear a song and it puts you right back somewhere. It's so tied in with our emotions and our history that it's a huge thing.
The Monkees, you spent some time with, and I believe you even played tambourine
The
on a
Monkees,
recording?
yes. I spent some time with two of the Monkees last night at the Troubadour. Mike Nesmith played, and Mickey Dolenz was there, my old pal. He also lived down on Lookout Mountain Avenue, right near Joni Mitchell. I got hired by Tiger Beat magazine one day in '68. The editor said, we'd like you to go down to this recording video set, filming set, and photograph these guys, and at the end of the day, give us the film and we'll pay you, $300, I think it was. Wow, And I went down there and I met these guys, and I'd seen a couple of them around, but I didn't know them. And I had kind of longish hair, we all had beginning Beatle haircuts and loved beads. And so I was a kind of a kindred spirit, and that first day, we all became really good friends. They didn't like photographers very much because they were these older AP type of guys, and they would say, okay, boys, do something zany. That was, they hated that, and they wouldn't cooperate. But I was not a photographer, I was just a pal who had a camera, and that's the way it went. And I would work there, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, working for different magazines and working for the Monkees company for Screen Gems. And then I went on the summer tour, and then I've photographed them ever since, including last night. Well, the Eagles. The Eagles came from folk rock, which I was certainly in, and a harmony singer. I mean, great harmonies. I mean, Glenn Frey and Don Henley, both of them, when I hear a song and they're singing, I mean, I mentioned Jackson Browne, I hear a song and it just stops me, my mouth drops open. I mean, just something about Jackson Browne's plaintive voice, and they're like anthems when he sings, This is very much the same with Don Henley. His voice, oh my God, just amazing. And Glenn Frey, beautiful, wonderful guy, so full of life. And I went on the road probably mostly with the Eagles. I mean, I've been on the road with 20 groups, but more times, I think, with the Eagles, several different huge tours. And they're so much fun. There's a reason certain people really climb to the top and become famous for their songs and their music and their songwriting, and it's because they are that clever. They are, if the cream rises to the top. Those guys are amazingly clever human beings. I mean, just sitting on an airplane with them, talking to them. It's not like the usual bunch of friends, you know, people, just random people. They're really fun to be with, and so that was them. David Cassidy, very much like the Monkees, I got that same phone call from Tiger Beat magazine a few years later. Would you go down to this film set and photograph the Partridge Family for our Teeny Bopper magazine? I went down there, and the first day, there's David Cassidy. I said, hey, man, you know, and I had longer hair, and he goes, oh, hey, you know, and and I said, oh yeah, I just came back from living with Stephen Stills in England for 4 months. Really? He said, well, next break in filming, come out to my trailer. I've got a guitar. I'll play you some songs. He was frustrated, me and Keith Partridge. He wanted to be a rock and roll guy. And so we were instantly friends. And I toured around the world several times with him over a several-year period. In fact, I played the harmonica on one song. I put my camera down, pick up the harmonica, and do my little harmonica solo. But I was his, you know, I was his documentarian. I mean, I traveled all over, and we usually have the room next door to him in the hotel room and just photograph all day long, whatever was going on. That's.
You did an Australian tour, did?
We did, yeah. We started in New Zealand, and then went to Australia. I spent several months in Australia with David Cassidy. He went over, he won some awards over there, and he did a publicity tour, and then he did a concert tour, at least one, maybe two. And it's such adventures. I mean, in Melbourne, Gina Lollobrigida was staying in the hotel with us, you know, and she came to the concert. We were both backstage shooting together, and then she wanted to photograph David, an exclusive photograph. And so her idea was she photographed him in bed, sitting on the bed, and she had room service bring up fruit, bananas, pineapples, apples, oranges, all around him on the bed. And she said, this is the little girls are outside singing for David, calling for David, and he's in bed surrounded by the fruits. And I don't think there was a double meaning there, you know? I think she just thought it was funny. He was in bed with, not with the little girls, but with the apples and oranges. So, you know, that kind of thing just went on all the time with David. He was a fun guy. I mean, when you travel with somebody who's, you know, world famous and crowds are, you know, trying to, you know, it's very exciting.
You were the official photographer at Woodstock. When you knew you were going to shoot that gig, what was you thinking going into the festival?
As I say, a lot of these things started with a phone call in my kitchen in Laurel Canyon. A fellow named Chip Monk was on the line. Edward Berenson Monk, and his friends called him Chip. Chip Monk, who now lives in Melbourne, was a very famous, you know, lighting and staging guy. And he said, and I knew him from the folk days, you know, from our touring days. And he said, Henry, we're going to have a huge concert out here, a festival. You ought to come out here. And I said, but Chip, I'd love to, but I don't know those people. How do I get a photo pass? I'll speak to the producer. And the next day, Michael Lang called, and all he said was, Chip says we need you. I'm going to send you $500 and a ticket. And I flew out. And I got there 2 weeks before the festival and documented all the building of the stage and the grounds and the camping area, the hog farm. Oh, I just wandered around all day. It was like summer camp, you know. And I mean, I don't consider it work. It's what I mean, pay me, don't pay me. I'm going to take 100 pictures, you know, a day, either way, you know. It's just what I do. And I took more than 100 pictures a day there, of course. But so 2 weeks of the building, and then finally people started showing up in that field. My first thought was, what are those people doing there? Oh yeah, I forgot. There's going to be a festival, you know. I mean, I get hung up in the daily thing. I mean, you know, the hippie carpenters, you know, were sawing and hammering, and the hippie ladies would bring lunch and Coca-Colas, and, you know, there was a little bit of smoking going on, and I just was having a great time, you know, and never even thinking it was going to be a festival. When you say, what did I think about it, you know, it kind of crept up. on us all. And of course, nobody knew how big it was going to be. You could see an awful lot of people out there. And then that Saturday afternoon, someone brought a copy of the New York Times with an aerial photo. And then we learned all the highways were closed, and then, wow, you know. And of course, I had an all-access pass working for the producer, so I was right up on stage. When Jimi Hendrix played Monday morning, I was, just a dozen feet away, and it was wonderful, yeah. And we never knew it was going to go down in history. It was just a wonderful time. And that's what, all the photos that I took, I never knew they would go down in history. I never once thought, wow, someday I'm going to have a lot of pictures. Never once, I just thought, wow, what's happening today? Where am I going to go? I've been asked to go here or go there. I just, it just worked that way. You'd go have lunch on Sunset Strip and meet somebody, Mama Cask. Oh, come on up to the house, we're going to swim in the pool. You go up there and there's John Sebastian. Says, hey, I need a picture. And it just one thing led to another.
Who's the most photogenic artist you've ever photographed?
Paul McCartney, Linda Ronstadt, Joni Mitchell. Gosh, people are people. They're all beautiful to me. They're all, I think every person is amazing. But photogenic, geez, I don't know. I really like the Sweet Baby James photo of him like that, I think he looked really handsome. But the most fun person really, I think, was Paul McCartney, because I did get to spend a week while they recorded London Town on these boats floating on Watermelon Bay in the Virgin Islands. And I got to spend, we never left the boats for a week. And so it was just this floating paradise with all this great music and great dinners and great stuff going on. Oh my God. The last night we had a huge dinner and Paul McCartney played the pump organ, and his little girls, Heather, Mary, and Stella, sang, "What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we," and it was such a wonderful time.
You didn't bother with developing your photos in the
No,
room.
never developed a role.
Did you entrust that to the same people all the time?
Well, in the beginning, I was only shooting color transparencies because that's all I cared about for slideshows. I couldn't project the black and white, and so you just send that to Kodak. You couldn't do that in your bathroom anyway. It had to be done in a real proper color place, and so I'd just turn it into the camera store and come back the next day and collect the pictures. Then people started needing black and white for publicity because newspapers couldn't print color. And then they'd say, well, we need black and white publicity photos, so I'd take black and white. And I found a lab that did it. And so all these years, the same lab has done it. Chinese guys in the middle of the night are developing my film. I never went to school. I never learned how to develop, or print. To me, it was the act of looking through that little hole and framing it up, and then just waiting for the right moment and pushing the button. That was it, just catching it,
Were there any regret photo shoots that didn't work out, or the film was lost, or anything like that?
No. Once I had to photograph Jimi Hendrix's father getting an award with all the record honchos, holding up plaques in some hotel somewhere, and I went, okay, took the pictures. Then we're all walking out, and I'm reeling the film back in. I said, boy, this is it's a little too easy, When I opened it up, oh my God, there was no film in there. I said, wait a minute, you guys, there might have been some small problem. I just want to make sure. Let's just do that again real quick, So, I didn't say, wait, I didn't put any film in the camera. Those things happen, of course, But no, I've been lucky. They usually come out pretty good. And
for a young band who want great publicity shots, what are the do's and don'ts? What advice would you give?
Well, that's interesting you would say that, because mostly I get the question, I want to do what you do. I'm a photographer. I want to be like you. And I would say, well, then meet the bands, Go to clubs, see which bands do you love, which people can you get close to, and say, look, can I take your picture? And then don't just shoot them in the club. Say, well, could I come to your next rehearsal? Could I come to your sound check? And then when you're there, say, would you guys just, how about 5 minutes out the back door in the alley? And then you have a picture no one else has. And say, hey, that's pretty good. We need a publicity shot. I mean, that's what, what to do. For a band, I mean, nowadays, everybody has a camera. I mean, iPhones take great pictures, I mean, just, find a clever girlfriend, with an iPhone. I don't know. Everybody has cameras now. Back when I was shooting, there weren't. When I photographed the Doors at the Hollywood Bowl, I was the only photographer, there, crouching in front of the stage. Can you imagine today if Morrison and the Doors were playing? There'd be 500 photographers, right? And you could shoot one song and then you're out. Then I could sit there and shoot the whole show. Yeah. It's change. I mean, everything changes, right? It's a growing process.
Yeah. You've shot a lot of gigs, but what you're really famous for are the incidental shots, just the hanging out. Mm-hmm. Even though there are a million cameras out there, you still don't really see those type of shots.
You don't see
those incidental just
hanging out shots. Yeah, I think there are now so many photographers, and what happened was when more and more photographers came on the scene, and then some of them would start like making a poster and selling it. I mean, I was friends with the band. I mean, I wasn't trying to make money on the side by selling pictures out the back door. I never even thought about that. I was showing them in my slideshows, and people would use them in magazines or album covers. But unfortunately, some people would go shoot a show and then, try to make a poster and sell it, and then especially online. So people are guarded now. You have to sign a contract. You can only shoot 3 songs. Well, you can't get that much in 3 songs. If you're a newspaper guy, you can get the 1 picture for the paper, but all the good things are going to come later in the concert. So you have to know the group, get an all-access pass. They have to trust you. It's a matter of trust. I think one of my partners, Timothy White, in our Morrison Hotel Gallery, no, it was Mick Fleetwood. We have a gallery in Maui at Mick Fleetwood's club, and he gave a little talk the other night, and we had a show of my photos, and he said, a lot of this was trust. Those groups had to trust that photographer that he was going to get a really good picture. They put their trust in him. They would let themselves be photographed. And I think, maybe it's hard to know who to trust maybe now.
What are you most proud of, Henry?
My kids. Just proud to be a human being living amongst all the other human beings. I am so glad that I got to take all those pictures. I don't claim it, as some kind of a badge of honor. I don't even, I say, look, I didn't make those pictures. I was there. I got to capture those moments, But it's the people in the photos, that's the main thing. I was quietly the guy who captured that moment, But it's really what you really are looking at is those people, those great musicians and those great moments. I will say I really love people. I think people are amazing. Every single person is amazing. I just think, each one of us is a universe. Every single person is, each one of us knows what it's like to be in our life with our past and our fears and our, feelings and our dreams and our wishes and all. Everybody has that, right? I think that's amazing. I think it's amazing. Still trying to figure out, all the things about being a human being, what an amazing adventure it is. And that's the way I kind of approach, hanging out with people. And I will say, not being in a photo shoot, but just hanging out with real people in their real life. I get to sit and watch and just wait. Some people say, well, most of your people are smiling in your pictures. Well, because that's when I take the picture. I wait. If I'm photographing Joni Mitchell, she'll be talking to somebody, and I'll be looking through there, just waiting until she looks click, that's it. Just wait till she looks and smiles. I get to pick the moment, and I usually look for the moments when I think the people look the best way the way I want them to look, the best way they can look. You know, or I mean, if I'm taking a picture of some business guy behind his desk, that he needs for a journal of some kind. I mean, I'll sit there and talk to him and keep watching him, and I'm not going to take the picture when he's frowning or looking. I'll wait and say something to him, and he'll kind of say, "Oh yeah," and I'll go click. That's the way that person looks good. Sometimes tomorrow, someone will say, "Oh, someone will ask me to come over and take headshots, some actress, say, or actor, that I don't even know, really." And I think, okay, well, my job is to make them look the best way they can look. I don't even know them, right? So it's just a visual thing, I don't really know who they are, but I know what they look like. I know when a person really looks good and when they don't. I mean, that's the fun of it, though, the framing and the looking and the waiting and just the capturing the moment. I've said before, so I'm known for capturing all these moments, but I think of myself as a little more zen than that, a little more existential. You know what I mean? Those are all past moments. This is the only real thing, right now, right here in this moment. And then somebody pointed out, well, you've brought those past moments into the present. I said, oh, okay, well, I can live with that. But to me, life is, it's right here. But it's true. I mean, every one of those moments was the moment when I was in it, still trying to figure it out.
Diltz, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Lovely.
That's brilliant.
Lovely talking to you, Craig.